The Vanishing of Sherri Papini, a tale of betrayal, deception, and redemption. Redding, California was the kind of place where neighbors waved hello, children played in the streets, and crime seemed like a distant worry. Nestled in the shadow of Mount Shasta, it was the ideal place for Keith Papini and his wife Sherri to raise their young family. But on a crisp November day in 2016, their quiet life shattered, leaving the town reeling and a nation captivated by a mystery filled with deceit and heartbreak. Keith Papini appeared to have it all: a loving wife, 2 beautiful children, and a stable job. His wife Sherri was a stay-at-home mom who embraced the idyllic suburban lifestyle, dedicating her days to her children Tyler and Violet. She also jogged along the wooded trails near their home, but beneath the surface of their picturesque life lay a web of secrets that no one. On November 2, 2016, Keith returned home from work expecting the usual chaos of family life. Instead, he found a house eerily silent. The children were still at daycare, a glaring anomaly given Sherri's meticulous routines. Panic bubbled up as Keith called her phone repeatedly, but there was no answer. Using a phone tracking app, Keith located her device near a jogging trail she frequented. When he arrived, his worst fears seemed confirmed. Her phone lay abandoned on the ground, earbuds still attached, and strands of her blonde hair tangled in them. It was as if Sherri had been snatched from the earth. Keith immediately called 911. His voice cracked with urgency as he described the scene. "She would never leave the kids like this," he told the dispatcher, his mind racing through terrifying scenarios. Something's wrong. Sherri's disappearance sent shockwaves through Redding. Neighbors and strangers alike joined search efforts, combing the rugged terrain in hopes of finding her. Flyers plastered the town bearing Sherri's smiling face and the words "Missing, please help." Keith became the face of a community in crisis, making emotional pleas on television and organizing search parties. To the world, he was a devoted husband desperate to bring his wife home. "I thought about her screaming my name," Keith later recalled in an emotional interview, "and I wasn't there." Despite the community's efforts, days turned into weeks with no sign of Sherri. Whispers began to circulate about her sudden disappearance. Some pointed to her troubled past and rumors of erratic behavior. But to Keith, these were distractions. All he cared about was finding his wife. Then, 22 days after she vanished, the unthinkable happened. On Thanksgiving morning, a truck driver spotted a disheveled woman stumbling along a rural highway over 140 miles from Redding. It was Sherri. She was bruised, emaciated, and branded with a mysterious mark on her shoulder. Her wrists were bound with zip ties, and she looked like she had been through hell. Sherri's story was horrifying. She claimed 2 Hispanic women had abducted her at gunpoint, held her captive, and subjected her to weeks of abuse. She spoke of being locked in a dark room, chained to furniture, and taunted with cruel laughter. The nation was stunned. Who were these women, and why had they done this? To Keith, Sherri's return was nothing short of a miracle. He embraced her, vowing to protect her from further harm. But to law enforcement, her story raised questions. There were no eyewitnesses, no substantial leads, and no forensic evidence to corroborate Sherri's tale. The branding, injuries, and conditions of her captivity, while horrifying, did not align with what investigators typically saw in abduction cases. For months, detectives worked tirelessly to find Sherri's captors, but their investigation hit dead end after dead end. Meanwhile, Sherri's inconsistent accounts of her ordeal only deepened their suspicions. Despite this, Keith remained steadfast in his support, believing his wife's harrowing story without question. His devotion was unyielding, but the weight of the situation was clearly taking its toll. By 2020, the case had gone cold. Then came the breakthrough. Advances in DNA technology allowed investigators to match a sample found on Sherri's clothing to an unexpected source: James Reyes, an ex-boyfriend of Sherri. Confronted with this evidence, Reyes confessed to a shocking truth. Sherri had orchestrated her own disappearance. According to Reyes, Sherri had contacted him months before her disappearance, asking for his help in escaping what she described as an unhappy life. Reyes claimed Sherri stayed at his apartment during the 22 days she was missing, inflicting injuries on herself and fabricating her abduction story. It was a plot straight out of a crime novel, but for Keith, it was an unfathomable betrayal. The revelation shattered Keith's reality. For 4 years, he had stood by Sherri, enduring public scrutiny, financial hardship, and the emotional toll of believing his wife had endured unimaginable suffering. To learn that it was all a lie, that she had manipulated him and everyone else, was devastating. "I'm the idiot husband that stayed around the whole time," Keith later told investigators. "I don't want her anywhere near my kids or me." The public perception of Sherri transformed overnight. Once seen as a victim, she was now labeled a fraud. In March 2022, Sherri was arrested and charged with mail fraud and making false statements. During the trial, she admitted to the hoax, signing a plea deal that resulted in an 18-month prison sentence. Her actions had cost law enforcement hundreds of thousands of dollars and caused untold emotional damage to her family. For Keith, the betrayal went deeper than wasted resources. It was personal. Sherri had not only deceived him but also jeopardized their children's sense of stability. Determined to protect his family, Keith filed for divorce and sought full custody of Tyler and Violet. By May 2023, the divorce was finalized, and Keith was granted full custody of the children. He described his resolve to provide a loving, stable environment for his kids, free from the chaos their mother had introduced into their lives. "My goal is to shield them from the media circus and the instability Sherri brought into our family," he stated in his court petition. Keith's life became a quiet one, focused entirely on his children. He avoided the spotlight, retreating into the privacy of family life. Friends and neighbors noted his resilience, marveling at his ability to endure such a public and personal betrayal, while maintaining his role as a devoted father. Meanwhile, Sherri's time in prison was marked by introspection, at least according to her legal team. She expressed remorse for her actions, though many, including Keith, doubted the sincerity of her apologies. For Keith, the past was something to move on from, not dwell upon. The case of Sherri Papini remains one of the most bizarre and unsettling stories in recent memory. What began as a tale of a missing woman ended as a cautionary tale of deception, manipulation, and the devastating ripple effects of a single person's lies. For Keith, it was a painful reminder of the fragility of trust and the strength required to rebuild after betrayal. Today, Keith Papini focuses on the future. He finds joy in the small everyday moments with his children, helping with homework, attending soccer games, and creating a sense of normalcy in their lives. While the scars of Sherri's actions may never fully fade, Keith has chosen to prioritize what matters most, the happiness and well-being of Tyler and Violet. "I'll never understand why she did what she did," Keith admits. "But I know what's important now, my kids, their future, and the life we're building together." As Redding moves on from the sensational headlines, Keith Papini stands as a quiet testament to resilience and the power of love for his children. In the end, it's not the lies or the betrayal that define him, but the strength he found to protect his family and rebuild their lives.